Okay, so here's section 1.5, absolute value. You should have got the basics from the packet. Basic things, knowing that absolute value is a distance from zero. Now remember, distance goes in both directions. We have the negative direction on the number line, the positive direction on the number line. Remember that zero is going to be in the middle, and we want to know what's the distance from that value to the zero. Since distances can't be negative, it has to be some kind of measurable value positive, we're always going to have a positive answer. Now that two directions from zero, that's how we can set up our two equations to solve for the value of x with absolute values. When we have absolute value of x plus 9 equals 34, we can set up the two equations. X plus 9 equals 34, that's the standard equation, or I call it the standard equation. It's the positive direction. We also have to worry about the negative direction. Okay? The x plus 9 stays the same, that's not changing, but what it's equal to becomes negative, it's the opposite. And now just some basic solving. Subtract your 9, we have x equals 25. Subtract your 9, x equals negative 43. Okay, now those are the x values that we found. We should go back and check to see if there are strenuous solutions. We're not going to do that right now, we'll talk more about that later. But right now we're just interested in what are the x values from this equation. So there's one basic example that again you should have seen from the packet. Let's do a couple more slightly complicated ones. Here we have absolute value 6x plus 4 equals 3x plus 14. I'm going to set this up the same way. Two equations, one with the positive answers, one with the negative answers. 6x plus 4 equals 3x plus 14. There's our basic equation. 6x plus 4 equals negative 3x minus 14. Okay. So it's the same thing. Now we have to solve these linear equations, which we should be able to solve linear equations pretty quickly now. Okay, we've been practicing for a few days, so now we're just trying to get x by itself. Collect the variables, minus 3x. I'm going to bring my 4 over, and we should end up with 3x equals 10. Divide by 3, and we have 10 over 3. Okay? You could also give me a fraction, 3.333. I'm going to ask for 3 decimal places and round it correctly. Okay? If it's a fraction, make sure you just simplify it correctly. Simplify it as much as you can. Now the other one, the work should be basically the same. Okay? The steps should be pretty close to the same. So I'm going to bring my 3x over. This time I'm going to add 3x. I'm going to still subtract 4. 9x equals negative 18. X equals negative 2. So there are our two x values that we have. Okay, 10 over 3 and x equals negative 2. Okay. In the next example, we have 3 times absolute value 7x minus 3 equals 6x plus 15. That 3 is different. It's outside the absolute value. That needs to get taken care of first. Now, when I said this, I said 3 times the absolute value 7x minus 3. We're not going to get rid of this just like if it was 3 times x. The opposite is divide, so we're going to divide both sides by 3. Okay? That will cancel out. Now over here, I always like saying 2 small fractions. Each piece needs its own division. Make sure you do that so you don't forget to simplify one of the values that you're dividing to on that side of the equation. Here this reminds you, you can simplify 6x over 3, you can simplify 15 over 3. Okay, so just some basic division, we get 2x plus 5 on that side. Now we rewrite this, both pieces are going to become negative, just like before. 7x minus 3 equals 2x plus 5. That's our basic standard one. Then we have 7x minus 3, negative 2x minus 5. Okay, so now we just got to do some basic solving. I'm going to bring my 2x over, add my 3, 5x equals 8, divide by 5, get 8 over 5. Okay? For the next one, we're going to add 2x this time, add 3, and this time we end up with 9x equals -2. Okay, so dividing by 9, x equals -2 over 9. Okay, and you can, if you want to turn these into decimal, that's fine. 1.6 and -0.222. Okay, just make sure 3 decimal places you turn into a decimal and simplify the fractions as much as possible. Okay, 7x minus 3, that did not change. That's always staying the same. It's the numbers outside the absolute value. Okay, on the other side, that's going to become opposite. Okay, so keep that in mind when you're doing this, and make sure you get rid of everything outside the absolute value. One more example. -2 times absolute value of x plus 10 plus 4 equals 8x plus 14. Now, looking at this one, I like to show people this. -2x plus 4 equals. If that was the equation I asked you to solve for x, how would you get x by itself? You get rid of the 4, then you get rid of the -2. Well, it's the same work here. Okay? You would get rid of the 4, and then get rid of the -2. Okay? So over here, you would subtract 4 from both sides. Over here is the same thing. Subtract 4 from both sides. Now think about where you're going to subtract the 4 from. Has to be like terms. You can't do 8x minus 4, but you can do 14 minus 4. Okay, so subtracting that, they're the ones that you're going to do your subtraction. So our new problem, -2, x plus 10, absolute value of x plus 10 equals 8x plus 10. Okay, and now with that -2, just like with what we did last example, we're on divide. -2, -2, -2. This time we're doing it to both pieces. So notice the difference. Adding, subtracting, you look for like terms. When you're doing this division, you're going to do every piece on that side. X plus 10, -4x minus 5. So now let's set up our two equations and solve. We have x plus 10 equals -4x minus 5. They're the negatives, so that's going to be our negative direction. In our positive direction, x plus 10 equals 4x plus 5. And again, basic solving should be pretty quick by now. We should be able to get x by itself. Bring my 4x over, bring my 10 over, x equals -3. Okay, I'll start skipping some steps for these linear equations that we should be able to solve. Bring the 4x over, we're subtracting it this time. Subtract the 10 gives us -5. We're going to end up with 5 over 3. Okay, so we have x equals -3, x equals 5 over 3, or 1.667. Make sure you round that one correctly. Some people have trouble rounding that one or misrounding the 6 to a 7 there. Okay, so that's a couple more examples of absolute value. Solving for the value of x when you have that. Make sure you get rid of everything outside the absolute value. Okay, and then you can set up your two equations.